Good morning, everyone. I'm Professor Christina Salabuta, CEO of Philo for Thought, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our two co-moderators for the podcast recording on AI integration. The first is Peter Garras, NYU graduate and software engineer with a focus on AI integration. And the second is Ana Fiorentinos, LSE graduate with a Master of Science in Philosophy and Public Policy, specializing in AI governance and platform regulation. Peter and Anna, I'm passing the mic to you to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Christina. I'm here with Stephen Parada, tax specialist at Parada Tax and Consulting Services.
And Michael Albeter, Director of Business Development at ArcLet.
Thank you both of you for coming. Let's begin with a brief introduction on how generative and predictive AI have impacted your profession. Stephen, let's start with you first.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I think for generative and predictive AI, the biggest impact is really efficiency. We could spend less time on, some repetitive tasks that we do and more time on, strategic advisory work, where I think we're valued the most. On the generative side, I think we can help, it would help us with drafting the communications for clients, looking up tax law changes, creating analysis and so on. And then predictive AI, I think, is improving more like estimating some tax situations for clients, planning, identifying issues and stuff like that. So both sides, I believe, are very helpful. But most of all, like I mentioned, efficiency is definitely, I think, the main factor.
Yeah, this is a very important question. So I am on the bookkeeping side of things, which means that we are working with clients' financial data on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So it's a lot of ongoing data that's flowing through any given small business accounting system. We definitely have been impacted by this, primarily through the development of the common tools that are used in bookkeeping. Most people have heard of Xero, QuickBooks Online, Expensify. There's just an enormous amount of platforms that small businesses utilize. We work on probably 300 different platforms.
Wow.
And most of them have implemented their own AI tools to perform certain functions. And what we have found is that many of these tools do have value. They can accelerate our work. We do take a very pragmatic approach, though. Because we've worked on so many platforms, we are very cautious in how we initially test these platforms for their AI tools that are integrated. The goal that we have is to understand how consistently accurate they are. I'm going to give a very specific example because it's one that impacts a lot of small businesses, and it is QuickBooks Online. They have a tool that will, they claim, will automatically code your transactions that come in from your bank or your credit card. And what we have found is that it does do a fairly good job, meaning that it might be accurate 95 to 98% of the time. These are stats that I've gotten just from talking to my team. We have 75 accountants. The problem with that number, though, is that because it does make a certain amount of errors, we still need to review its results. And what we have found, at least in this case, it's actually more efficient for us to do the work still for that particular issue.
Wow.
And the reason I'm pointing that out is the marketing message is that, yeah, it will help you automate the coding of transactions. And for some businesses, some very simple businesses, maybe solo consultants or small businesses, it does work well. But as a larger organization with more lines of revenue, much more varied financial data, it does not work as well. And so, yes, it has helped. The AI has helped us quite a bit. I would say we take a pragmatic approach. The biggest thing that we face is helping our clients and our prospects understand the limits because they're living on marketing hype. We're living on day-to-day experience. So there's a little bit of a gap that we have to help people cross sometimes.
Real quick, is the gap easy or hard because they're so used to the hype, but then the reality hits about how actually good the product is or how bad the AI is?
It really depends on my conversation partner. I've had near arguments over it. with some folks, and I just let it go. And I've had some people say, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. I have other platforms that I utilize have AI, and we did implement it, and it wasn't really there yet.
Hmm.
So it really depends on my conversation part. But what I can say, no question, these platforms will get there. I have
Got
no
it.
doubt.
I
It's
see.
just not there yet. Yeah.
Moving on. So, how is AI integration leveling the playing field for small businesses as opposed to larger firms? And I'm going to start with Stephen again.
So we're actually a small firm, so I
Uh-huh.
can definitely answer this. Larger firms used to really dominate because they had big teams, a lot of staff, research departments, bigger budgets. And now, like a lot of the capabilities that they have is available to smaller firms because of the AI tools. So, for example, utilizing, like I mentioned in the previous question, the efficiency,
Hmm.
smaller practice, we don't have the staff, but we can deliver, turnaround times a lot quicker than we used to. We have less staff to do the work, but we could do it more efficiently. And so I think the smaller firms are going to technically prosper from this, whereas the larger firms, I think, are going to get hurt a little bit because they're overstaffed now, right? So basically, I think the playing field's a little more level because the solo practitioners or the smaller firms are able to compete in these markets that they may have not been able to before because of efficiency and there's only so many
Yeah.
hours a day and so many staff that they have, right? So it's really you're able to compete on the expertise. I think if you use the tools properly, your responsiveness is going to become quicker because of efficiencies. And, we could also keep the price down, right? So instead of having all these staff, which a large firm have to do these, intensive researches, and they have to look through, articles and things like that, AI is a good tool to kind of bring everything together. So, you know, you could still offer, a personalized client experience and service and do it efficiently and compete on a higher level because you have access to data that you didn't have access to before. So I think that the smaller firms are definitely going to be competing. Although the large firms, like I said, they may be kind of overstaffed, so that's going to be an interesting factor, obviously, with, job loss and stuff like that, which obviously is in the news. So it's not something to be ignored. But I think efficiency is important with these tools. And it's not necessarily, you need to have the most research staff at you because you have the technology to kind of support you in that.
Thank you so much. Michael, same question.
Yeah, really good question. I'm going to support Steven's answer very much. I think I actually know I will call it a large mid-size accounting firm that recently made a massive investment in AI automation. And what Steven just said was supported by a story I was told by one of their partners. The need for subject matter expertise is less. What they need are people who can have great conversations with business leaders and explain what's happening with their taxes. But the deep technical knowledge is they're leaning right into AI and how that can handle that. But what I did read this question as maybe being a little bit more about actual day-to-day business operations. And I think it goes in line with what Steven said anyway. For small businesses, AI integration, it is leveling the playing field, right? A large company can afford to fully automate certain tasks in their business, which can provide a lot of automation. If you have the capital to make that initial investment, it can be very worthwhile. But in my day-to-day business, I'm working with companies with between 2 and 20 million in revenue. So not massive companies. But what I see happening is young data scientists putting
Hmm.
out, starting a business, helping people aggregate data, right size that data, and use AI to help them analyze different unit economics, margins, KPIs, budgets, forecasting. It's very custom, but it's accessible. It might be an investment of 10 to 15,000, but you end up with a beautiful dashboard that allows you to see the performance of, say, 2 to 10 units, in a geographic area. And that's something that only large companies had 5 years ago. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, and it perfectly blends into the next question I have, which is what AI tools have you and your team adopted over the years? Is there a major investment financially? Is there a major shift in terms of training and company culture now? I'm going to start with Michael with this one.
Yeah. So we look at the AI functionality of any of the tools we use. All the tools we use are large, publicly available tools. There is nothing proprietary in our bookkeeping. Um, some are better than others. We adopt the ones that we can reliably trust, and we use them to the best of our ability. And we're always on the lookout for improvement. There's really no major investment on our side, except there is a little bit of a shift in terms of training and company culture. So for us, we hire folks with 10 years at least of accounting experience with a degree in accounting or finance, right? So we expect them to have a certain amount of technical expertise. But what we really have to look for these days is a technical proficiency or a lack of fear around technology, right? So we need people who are technically proficient and hopefully excited to dig into new platforms and really experiment with them and see how they can work and how they may not work. So that's an element of our recruitment that is new over the last few years.
And Stephen, what would you say that you have seen over the years?
Well, we've adopted some tools, some softwares already. We're looking into some others actually. We don't utilize everything available. Obviously, there's new things coming out almost daily. But we've used some platforms that, allow us to do some review, generating kind of concise memos and agendas, summaries, emails, things of that nature. We found that to be very helpful. I mean, I have personally. So, for example, I think Michael could attest to this because, when we go out and pitch clients together, we'll have put an agenda together that, doesn't take very long. And we could have a very nice format that, maybe takes a couple of hours. It would only take us maybe, 15 to 20 minutes to kind of put together through AI, working it back and forth. So, it's given us, the tools that we need to kind of go sell also, which is super important in our industry because we got to keep the work coming in. But
Absolutely.
also, the biggest tool I think that we've adopted is, that's really the main point of your question is really the research platforms. I think in document review, there are some tools out there with scanning right now for the tax softwares. We haven't actually used those, so I can't speak of how good or bad they are. But from what I understand, they've been getting a lot better because they're extracting information from a scanned document right into the tax software, which saves a lot of data entry time when you do that. And I've actually spoke to my tax software, and I use a pretty big one of the big competitors out there. And to be honest with you, the cost is really not that much, a lot less than I thought it was going to be for that particular software, where you can extract information from tax documents right into the tax return. So from what I've seen right now, I think AI is in its infant stage. You have ChatGPT and other softwares that essentially they're free right now, and I think it's kind of just really a study to see like what's going on. And then obviously there's some subscription-based ones that they're gonna eventually charge you for, and they're charging for now.
Hmm.
Tax software has these integrated softwares that they actually do charge a la carte. But again, from what we've seen, they haven't been super expensive. So they're actually available to a lot of practitioners out there. So is it a major investment financially? Um, Not necessarily right now. Can it be? I'm sure if you have some proprietary software that, is doing something for you specific, I'm sure that could be very, very, very expensive. I know people use chatbots a lot on their websites. We don't yet. So that's been kind of helpful, I know, to some people. But from what I'm finding, it's not super expensive. A lot of subscription-based tools and softwares out there. And, in terms of, company culture, it's like I think Michael said, it's really like a mindset shift, you know, just kind of asking the better questions, validating the outputs from the AI, and then maintaining your professional judgment. It doesn't really replace expertise, it kind of amplifies it. So we're using these tools to amplify ourselves as professionals. And I think, asking the right questions, doing the right research, somebody who's qualified can do that a lot better than somebody not qualified. So, I think that's super important to consider. But yes, definitely just to wrap it up on that question, we're definitely adopting new AI. We're looking into different softwares and different subscription-based items that they have out there available. And then obviously some new stuff is going to be coming out soon. I mean, this is really, I think, the infant stages of it. So we're going to see what comes out. We're going to assess it, obviously from a financial standpoint and an efficiency standpoint, and see what works for our team.
That's a really good point, Stephen. Just real quick. There's an implication that premium platforms are necessary for a more accurate AI integration. How accurate do you think that is?
I think in some cases it may dig a little deeper. For example, there's a software called Tax GPT that helps with like tax research. I think it's more geared to that. I don't know where the information is all being pulled from, per subscription database, right? If it's Claude or ChatGPT or TaxGPT or one of these other softwares out there. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm not a tech person. I don't know if, for example, TaxGPT for tax research is pulling from the tax code specifically and then some other areas where ChatGPT may just be a generalized pull, right? So there are different things, and again, I'd like to learn more about this, and we're all kind of learning about it at the same time, I think. But that's a good point because the more expensive subscriptions, are they going to give you a better result? And the answer, Peter, honestly, might be yes. I don't know yet, right? Because we're still kind of figuring that all out. But we might get to our answer quicker using the right softwares, or the software specific to our industry might be like a little bit better, just because they're pulling from certain areas of the internet and different, periodicals and tax codes and all, newspaper ads and God knows what they're pulling from, or books. And so, you know, that can be a factor. I've kind of dabbled with it a little bit. I definitely want to a little bit more to see whether or not these softwares really are worthwhile if we're getting a different answer. I mean, the best way to check that, honestly, is just ask the same question for two different platforms, right?
Yeah.
And then see which answer is better or which answer you think makes more sense for you. And I'll just leave you with something else on that. If you ask AI a question and then ask it again and say a new tab, it's going to give you a different answer.
Yeah.
And so, so you really, like I said, it's a lot of analyzing data, understanding the softwares, feeling them out. And that's why I think a lot of them have these free platforms right now, right? Because they're like getting you hooked, seeing what you like.
Ah,
And then if you find something that's like pulling you in and saying, okay, you want this now, we're going to charge you now, right? Like
yeah.
it's subscription based, right? It's like, hey, even if you look at Amazon Prime Video,
Yeah.
it used to all be free. Now you go to Prime Video and you watch a movie or watch a series, it's all like paid, 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 paid. And
Yeah.
so it's actually hard to watch free stuff on Prime now. I mean, Netflix has a little different platform, but I think it's going to be like one of these like Prime platforms where it's like, hey, you want that tax data? And that's, I think, phase 2 or phase 3, whatever it is. So we're in the infant stages. But again, just to wrap up what you asked and what I said before, because I think it's important, does the software matter? It may. And I think that's where us professionals have to analyze that and understand, hey, we're getting information. Is it good information? Are we cross-checking it with other platforms? And what kind of results and answers are we getting? And what's successful? Which one do we like? I have clients that tell me Claude AI is the best and they love that one. Other clients are using ChatGPT. So I guess it's preference, and it might be somewhat industry specific.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to pass the mic over to Anna, who's going to go through the second half of our podcast.
All right, thank you, Christina. Continuing with Stephen, how has AI integration impacted daily operations and business development?
Thanks, Anna. It's a great question. So basically the daily operations have just been like streamlined from AI. For example, like tasks and work that's takes hours to do, takes maybe a couple of minutes, sometimes a couple of seconds. But I will say it takes a couple of seconds to get an answer, an answer for like question that you may have or research. But we have to understand something that it has to be interpreted, right? So it's impacted where it's faster. It's 100% faster. There's no doubt about that. But it's not lightning fast, right? A lot of people have that misconception because they say, well, we're getting an answer from AI within, 2.5 seconds. Well, that necessarily might not be the right answer, and it might not necessarily be a full answer, right? And so, we definitely can take more time to interpret that for our clients and ourselves. And
All right.
but what I must say is that it's definitely, it streamlines that in terms of like it gets the result quick, but there's some kind of back end that has to happen. Whereas I'll give you an example. Before you'd have to kind of get the first part, and that would take a while, and then the second part, reviewing it and seeing if it really makes sense and is correct, right? So that first part's done a lot quicker. So it's more the second part of the analytics and understanding of what you get. And so the daily operations have been definitely streamlined quicker. And then to answer your question about business development, it's and what I mentioned before, it really enhances the professional. So if the professional was good before, the professional might be better now with these tools. Because why? Because we can work a lot more efficient, we can work faster, we can get the results done. So I'll give you a quick example. My mind works where I just have a lot of thoughts going on at once, and I can put that into AI to organize my thoughts, right? And if it's business development, as I'm talking to a new or potential client, I'm writing notes down. And they mention trigger words and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, I'm like thinking of different things that may help them. And so I'm kind of collecting these thoughts in my head. And so if I put these thoughts into AI, it becomes much more efficient because then I could take the thoughts and turn it into potential work for this client. So I could take from a business development perspective, it kind of takes information to help sell my business, sell the client. And so, it's much more of a proactive outreach because I can kind of take the information that they have told me, the needs that they require, my thoughts, and kind of put them together very concisely. And you're able to kind of sell better because it's organizing your thoughts and it's also showing the client, hey, we can do all this for you. And it's kind of putting things together in a better perspective to help with business development. And then just one other thing on business development, you know, drafting emails and marketing tools and stuff like that is so much easier. They have some AI functionality where you can create an AI video for marketing and things of that nature, which I've tried in the past. And so you're putting the information in and it's generating, a marketing video for you or, an email with tax information and things like that that you can send out as a blast email. So it's definitely been very, very, very helpful for us daily and from the business development side.
And what about you, Michael?
Yeah, it is a great question. I am only business development, whereas Stephen is actually an actual tax expert. I am a salesperson for about 30 years. So I leverage ChatGPT extensively. I'm going to back up what Stephen said, that there's a lot of nuance that human beings deal with very quickly, very easily. I use chat extensively, both personally and professionally. And what I've learned from it is that there's a lot of nuance you have to help explain to your chat agent or to your chat conversation. And it is a skill set, something that has taken some time for me, at least. I've been using it for about a year and a half. And it has helped me from helping chat understand the problem I'm trying to solve. It's helped me understand, in an interesting way, the nuance of each sales conversation or the stage of that conversation. So yeah, I tend to deal with relationship-based sales, but I know that AI is being leveraged heavily even at the SDR level and all the way up through executive level sales, like Stephen and I are involved. It's incredibly useful, but it is a skill to learn to use. And one more comment I'll just say, because Stephen brought it up, drafting emails, drafting documents, it gets you to a certain point, but chat or most of these platforms, these AI platforms, they bring you right to the mean average answer. And I think most of us who are trying to win, we're not mean average people. We we need to take that initial answer, dig in, or heavily edit to make sure that we're hitting that mark we need to hit for our prospects. But it's an incredible development. It's definitely made things much more efficient. You just can't rely on it. It's first answer.
That's a very interesting point. And continuing, what professional trends have now been adopted as a result of AI integration, in your opinion, Michael?
I think I'm gonna go negative on this. I think that I'm gonna use LinkedIn as an example. Content creation. Yes, you can create a lot of quick content on AI. I think most people have gotten to the point where we can read a LinkedIn post from someone and understand right away if it's from chat. Either maybe that person isn't aware of M dashes and to remove them to eliminate some of that trail that AI leaves. But even the pacing, the structure of sentences, the layout of paragraphs and sentences are all very telling. And I think one of the sad things that we're experiencing right now, I think this will shift back to a little bit more human control eventually, is I think some folks are really relying on AI content as their final product. And it's taking away some of the humanity that we might have enjoyed in the past when reading people's professional content. I'd like to see that change, but that's right now what I'm seeing being adopted is quick is better than putting in deep thinking.
I agree. And how about you, Stephen? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's very robotic, as Michael mentioned, so it's good to get the facts, right? But then personalizing stuff is super important and having that connection with people. Because look, at the end of the day, when you're selling the business development, and Michael probably knows this best, you're selling yourself, you're selling your services. It's not a robotic sale, right? And so it's professional services, for example, is relationship based, right? So it can't all be very robotic, what we're kind of feeding to people. People needs to, relate to you, relate to your understanding of your business and your experiences and stuff like that. And that's something that, for example, like I've been doing this over 20 years, so I can, I've been around many different clients before. I've seen them in situations before, life changes, things like that, that I can, relate to. And can a robot relate to that or an AI software relate to it? Not really. It's going to give you an answer. It's going to be a very robotic answer. It might not be the best answer for the situation of the specific client or person, right? It's just a very generalized, answer, very objective, right? And we, as professionals, have to be subjective and understand the needs of our clients and the industry and things like that. So Michael kind of hit the nail on the head. You can't have robotic answers. We need to have kind of more personalized services. But again, we could definitely use these tools, right? And then put the personalized touch on them. And that's what each professional can do, and just, I'm going to reiterate, it's a tool, right? It's not a replacement, right? And people have to understand that.
Exactly. Uh, and when hiring or looking for teammates on a project, Michael, what skill sets do you now look for?
The biggest shift in bookkeeping, especially, this is sort of a reiteration of an answer I gave previously, is someone who is at the very least curious about technology, right? We win deals from small business people who are working with a bookkeeper who does not want to learn a new platform, does not want to help them implement new software. And that these days, because of the speed of innovation, is a killer if you're a bookkeeper. So we need people who are technically proficient at, GAAP, accounting, audit quality work, but also curious and excited to dig into new technology because our clients are bringing us new tech stacks every day. And we have to be not just willing, we have to be excited to get in, learn it, and help them perfect it, the use of it.
Right. And you, Stephen, what do you look for?
Yeah, definitely the literacy of the AI and the softwares and technology. I think that's super important. The Michael mentioned, the comfort with technology, automation, interpretation, I think is a very important skill. How you interpret data. Anybody could read data, anybody could search for data, but how do we interpret data and what questions are we asking thereafter, right? And so I think it's important. That's probably one of the most important things is interpreting the data, analytical thinking, to understand basically, how you're, assessing the information, what questions you're asking, are you asking the right questions? Um, and then obviously, the communication skills to explaining, how you got to this answer or what, how you kind of achieve this. Because, again, anybody with AI they may seem a little smarter than they are, but getting an answer, but are they asking the right questions? Are they asking all of the questions? Because they might be missing some information. So definitely when looking for professionals to hire on a project or full time or what have you, it's definitely understanding their abilities because their abilities are going to be enhanced by the tools that we give them or the tools that they're using, not the other way around, right? You're enhancing the person. And so, we definitely want to have someone who has, some technical knowledge, understanding, to ask the right questions. So I think that's important. And then, like I mentioned before, interpreting the data and then the communication skills back to, letting the client or staff or whomever know how you kind of get to that result.
Right, thank you. And now looking ahead, what do you see as AI's greatest long-term impact in the field of finance and equity? How about we start with you, Michael?
I honestly believe that there will come a time if I continue to work long enough that I am selling an AI platform instead of the skill set of human beings, right? If Elon Musk's estimate of how long it will take for true artificial intelligence to emerge, that will be the case. If he's wrong, then we will just continue to sell our services highly leveraged by what I imagine will be excellent AI, a set of excellent AI tools. Um, it's going to shift the way data, I think, is generated from platforms. I believe it will create a situation where there's a lot less variability across various platforms. When I say that, what I mean is like each bank, each credit card processor, each project management software, the output from each is very different. And I think in order to be viable as a platform, have to be more similarity so that AI tools can take that data more quickly, help us analyze it, help us do our work, and help us continue to grow our businesses. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes. And I think it's going to be exciting. And I hope to be part of this sort of industry long enough to see all that happen.
I'm sure you will be. And Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to stay positive, obviously. But the reality is there are some negatives. I see it already in my profession and other professions for that matter and other clients. But, look, at the end of the day, um, we have to have some kind of human oversight on the AI. I think, for the mundane tasks that, we do as professionals, what staff does as professionals is, kind of a dying breed, as they say, right? Because you have simple tasks that are just not needed anymore. Pulling information from tax forms or, bookkeeping, like pulling information from, a bank account or a credit card. That task is going to be computerized and automated. Um, but again, you do need that human oversight. Because when does the human oversight end, and then the computers they just do everything? Like I don't think we're really there yet. Obviously, that I don't know, 50 years in the future, 15 years in the future, I don't know, maybe. Um, but I think for now, staying positive, they definitely, you know, the shift of like what Michael said, he's going to be selling some AI platforms. I think that's absolutely true. And, I think also the quality of work is just going to be better And I think that's super important, you know, in the long term, even in the short term. I think the quality of work is definitely going to be better because there's more way to kind of check the results that you're giving. Have AI kind of check for things, look for, you know, for example, if you're doing a tax return, it could look for ways to save taxes or, you know, some ideas for the future, if you have a life-changing event or if you should set up a trust or, you know, just depending on what you need, you can kind of get some results there. So you can get a higher level type of work, you know, but for long term, unfortunately, there's going to be job loss. There's no doubt about that, right? And so, you know, the human interaction and the human oversight is definitely going to be needed. And I think it's going to be needed for a while. You know, unfortunately, with AI, data input, things like that, collections and different things that you don't really need a person to do. And I hate to say it like that, you know, or you need less people to do, right? So if you have a staff of, you know, 50 people and 10 are doing data input, you probably don't need 10. And it's just the reality of it, right? You might only need two or one or three or whatever the number may be. But you're going to need some more people to kind of have that oversight on what the AI does. So if the AI does your tax return or the AI does your bookkeeping, who's looking at that stuff, right? To make sure it's correct. We can't just rely on it and say, okay, the AI software is going to be doing it for us and that's 100% correct. No, right? You got to take a look and see if it is correct, if there's other areas to improve upon. So yeah, I think from, you know, just to wrap that question up, I think from, you know, you got to ensure ethical use, data privacy, human oversight. I think that's all important in the long term um, impact of AI.
All right, thank you. And before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Michael?
All I can say is that if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're currently seeking a new bookkeeper or a new CPA tax advisor, definitely dig in to how seriously they're taking the use of AI in their work and how they leverage it. I would look, some red flags would be, yeah, we use it completely. They should utilize it. They should have a little bit of skepticism about the results. That would be the best sign I would say you can look for. This has been great. I appreciate the time today, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Stephen, any final thoughts?
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, and I think it's, you know, we don't look to AI to replace, although like I mentioned, there may be some job loss, but I think, you know, it's kind of redefining our role as professionals. And like I mentioned before, it's really enhancing the people that you're working with. So if you find a good tax professional that has the knowledge, that has the experience, a good bookkeeper who's been doing this for, you know, 10, 20 years or what have you know, it's making them do a better job for you. And I think that's super important. And, you know, the human capital is needed, right? You know, I mean, people have different experiences and, you know, they have different understanding of things and, you know, they have a higher level understanding of things. And that's going to kind of make them better at what they do. So I think we don't look at it as people saying, "Hey, you know, I can get an AI to do my tax return or my bookkeeping or stuff like that." I think that's kind of foolish, to be honest with you, because I don't think you're gonna get the same result as someone who, you know, really understands it and uses that tool and is doing it more efficiently for you, right? So I think it's important that we remember that people are still important. These are just still tools. And even when the tools become very, very, very powerful, we still have someone kind of oversight and kind of looking and understanding it. But again, this has been great. Thank you for these questions, and you know, I'm excited for what's to come.
Thank you. Thank you both for spending time with us today and sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Many thanks to our wonderful guest speakers and our amazing moderators for continuing the discussion on AI integration across the disciplines. We look forward to seeing you all at our upcoming events. We have our symposium coming up in April on the 17th and 18th. And we also have a couple of other workshops and panel discussions scheduled for April and May. We hope you'll join us.